All right, we're live. Good morning. This is
Good
Attorney Vince.
morning.
Good morning. This is Attorney Vince Davis with Attorney Tamara Benefield. How are you this morning?
Excellent. Good morning, Vince. How are you?
Good. This show that we're doing is all about family law, and you are an expert in family law. You're a certified family law specialist in California, which is a really big deal. You have to pass an extra exam and you have to get recommendations and you have to prove have done certain stuff. So you truly are an expert. And I admire all you folks that are certified family law specialists because it's a lot of work to put in. And, to become an expert in this field is saying something.
Well, thank you, Vince. So first of all, Vince is not on my payroll to say that. So I appreciate the ingratiating comments. But yeah, the goal of this show is to talk about the various aspects of family law and essentially to take all that information that we get, in law school by virtue of practice and experience, by virtue of becoming experts in the field, by virtue of working with people for so many years, and condense it into this jam-packed and fun place where you can come and find out valuable information as you navigate your family life. It's a little bit broader than just the law because we want to talk about, like, for example, today we want to talk about things you need to know before you file divorce. And so this is kind of our brainchild, born of a lot of experience, and also it's born of a lot of personal experience. Vince and I, we're not just seasoned litigators. We've had full lives, children, families of our own. So, we're going to infuse a lot of our personal experiences and give you insight, beyond just the veil, beyond just the veneer of the law, and tell you, more about the emotional, psychological aspects of things you need to consider as reshape your life after a divorce, a custody battle, or any kind of family trauma.
I was just thinking, I went through my divorce maybe 30 years ago, maybe more. And it was an experience.
Yeah.
It wasn't a nightmare. It could have been, a huge nightmare, but it wasn't. At the time, we didn't have any children together, so that made it a lot easier. But yeah, the personal experiences, the experiences of dealing with clients, many clients over the years, um, gives you, a unique insight into this thing we call divorce here in California.
It does. It does.
So,
And mine is fresh. Like I just a little bit more about me. I've been practicing for 23 years. I have 3 children. I've been married twice. And I've been divorced recently. So I'm coming with this, hot off the press kind of attitude. Here are the things that even as an attorney, I wish I had considered before I filed divorce, before I took that leap into the unknown. So we're gonna open up a little bit and be a little bit more than just attorneys for you because we're real people. And just like you want to know if how your personal trainer handles their own nutrition, handles their own workout regimen, I think it's important for people to know how a family law attorney organizes their own family life and how they've dealt with situations and what would they do personally in that same scenario as the client.
what um, what do you think the most important thing you've learned about going through a divorce personally?
I think you need to prepare for the fact that you're going to be dealing with pain, trauma that gets recapitulated all over again throughout your divorce. Um, when you're divorcing someone, you really want to know, what are the kinds of things that they're going to settle for? What are the kinds of things that they want out of the divorce? And you think it's like this rational process, but what I've learned is that, when you're breaking up, divorce divorce tends to mirror the type of relationship you had, right?
Mm,
So if that person was hurtful and abusive, neglectful of you, um, non-responsive to you during the relationship, you best believe your divorce is going to have all of those elements. And those are the things that I'm really looking for when I interview a client is what kind of person are we going to be dealing with on the other side? Are they trying to hurt you? Are they trying to drag you? You know, a lot of the clients that I have something to protect. I mean, we all do. Our name, our family, the things that we leave behind that our children are going to see one day when we're no longer here, namely divorce pleadings. All of that is public. I mean, imagine your kid is 50 years old, going through their own midlife crises and going, okay, let me pull up my parents' divorce and read about not only how they felt about each other, but how they felt about me and how I impacted their divorce. So I think that dealing with pain, dealing with trauma, analyzing the temperament of the relationship is critical when you get a new client, because that's going to tell you a lot about how to navigate and what kind of case you're going to have, whether or not it's going to be high conflict, whether or not it's going to be easy to settle. And it's going to be easier to help the client through to understand, okay, I'm spotting not just an abuser, but a narcissist. Here's what you need to know, blah, blah, blah. So,
right. One of the things that I've found out over, I guess, my own divorce and 37 years of representing people is I don't think people really think about how a divorce is going to affect children.
yeah.
Because we're in the divorce and we're fighting each other and the clients are fighting each other, but there's some collateral damage there, and
Yeah.
I think that people don't consider that as much. I'll tell you something. I don't think I've ever told anybody this, but in my second marriage, I had two children, and maybe about 5 years into the marriage, we considered getting divorced. And I really thought about and I tried to feel out my kids about this. They were young, 8 and 9 at the time. And I came upon this realization that a divorce was going to upend their lives.
Yeah.
Upend their lives.
Yeah.
And, luckily at that time, my wife and I, we worked things out. But I can just imagine how much tougher it would be, on my children, had we not been divorced. I mean, had we gotten divorced. It's bad enough, kids have to grow up and go through life and, go through the challenges. But things really that happen to children early on do have a great impact later on in life. And I've seen that now. I've just, because people that got divorced when they were, the kid was like 5 or 6, and now I see the kid is now 20. I just I just was talking to a grandmother about this recently, where I represented her son, and the kid was very young, but now the kid's, probably 20, 21 years old, and we were talking about how the effect of the divorce, how the impact it had on the child.
Right.
And I kinda scratched my head thinking, "Wow,
Excuse me.
if people knew that, would they really do everything they do in a divorce?" Because sometimes, it gets so ugly. You
Yeah.
know, it it's ego driven, it's psychologically driven. It's, all of those shortcomings we have as people, from our own, baggage and our own upbringing, it's translated into the divorce.
So sorry.
Bless you.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
No, those are
So
great points. Vince, that is certainly one way to look at it. Um, but I offer this perspective. What are the consequences to the children of not getting the divorce? I
mm,
think people are so psychologically wedded to the paradigm of a nuclear family,
mhm,
mom and dad, 2.5 kids, a house and a garage and a dog. But I think when you really don't have that healthy relationship and your relationship is fraught with arguing in front of the children, fighting in front of the children, you really have to consider how much longer psychologically can the children survive seeing this before the damage that's caused from you trying to remain married, outweighs the foreseeable damage of getting a divorce. In other words, it's worse to stay in a relationship that hurts children, and you don't even realize it. A lot of couples argue, a lot of couples fight, but when that goes on too long and children start, regretting coming home from school, closing their ears, closing their doors to their rooms because they don't want to see mom and dad interact. And when they do interact, it's completely destructive and unhealthy. They're hearing curse words. They're hearing disparaging remarks. They're hearing criticism. I think that really destroys a healthy mind, a healthy growing mind of a child. So one perspective I offer is, will the divorce actually create a healthier child? Meaning once they're removed from that toxic situation. And I think once parents kind of let go of their own kind of romanticized view of the relationship, you can clearly see this relationship is maddening. It's destroying me. It's destroying my mental health. And you best believe if it's destroying your mental health, it's decimating the health of the children.
I often wonder, and I look at my own relationships from my first marriage and my divorce. Um, what causes people to reach that stage where at one time they loved each other, they wanted to be around each other, they had kids together? Sometimes I didn't have kids in my first marriage, but then it's like time to go.
Yeah.
What do you think leads up to that?
I think there's so many different factors, but they're all pretty predictable, right? So one big stressor on the family is finances.
Mm.
So usually when I see it, it's either finances, that's deteriorating and causing a lot of stress on the relationship. Someone has lost their job, etc. A lot of times it's cheating. It's checking out of the relationship. And then when people very early on in the relationship notice that things are going wrong, they're not reaching out for help. They're not getting their support system intact. They're not calling their therapist, their psychologist to try and help them. So I think that early intervention could help some of the deterioration that we see.
I know someone very close to me who is, I think, in their first or second year of marriage, and they're having difficulties.
I'm
And
sorry, Vince, could we pause for a sec?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm sorry, Vince. I'm like having allergies.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, I'm ready.
What was I saying? I was saying
You
this
were saying there was
person.
a couple that you were.
Yeah. And one of the things that is mentioned to me frequently are the financial strains in the relationship. And apparently, the sense I get is when they got together, things were going great financially for both of them.
Mhm.
There's been some bumps in the road, and now things are deteriorating financially. And it seems that both of them find that challenging and it's affecting the marriage.
Right. Well, listen, people are going to have to figure out their financial situations, whether they're married or not.
Hmm.
Some of the hardest cases are, you know, really when the finances deteriorate, because if you can't figure it out together, right? There's usually not enough money for people to really be stable and happy following a divorce apart. There's just not enough money. So yeah, you're gonna have to figure out your life, your income, your means of, stabilizing yourself. And more often than not, I'm not seeing as many stay-at-home moms. I'm seeing two people who have to work. And I think that that's a good thing, where you have, because one can ensure the other. If a husband has job loss, but the woman also is capable of working and does so, she can stabilize the family while he gets back on his feet, and vice versa. And I think that a lot of strain does come from the more traditional notions, right? That come from, 100 years ago, where women dream of being a stay-at-home mom, but the man is not wealthy. He really can't afford that. And he's trying to provide this kind of lifestyle, with the woman staying home. Meanwhile, she's sitting on a degree, not utilizing it. And these issues come up, right? They come up in spousal support, where later on, when it's obvious that there wasn't enough money to go around and really two people should have been working, um, he asks her to get a job, right? And then her world falls apart. Oh, I have to work. Newsflash, ladies and gentlemen, get a job. Sorry.
I had a flashback recently. I was representing someone, and
Okay.
I represent the husband, and he's former military, and he retired. And, he always thought that if he retired, he wouldn't have to pay child support and spousal support. And the judge told him just what you said. Newsflash, sir, you got to get a job.
Yeah, absolutely. And that doesn't mean that a woman who's, or a man who's, more often it's a woman who has stayed home for 10 years, is not entitled to spousal support. I am not saying that at all. But what I am saying is that there are economic realities right now that we have to deal with. And, you know, um, that should be worked out within the context of the marriage, where two people can sit down at the coffee table in the morning and say, here's how much money we're dealing with. This is what's coming in. This is what needs to go out. Can we afford childcare? Childcare is a huge expense. Can we afford children? Should we both be working? And just be a little bit more intentional about how they plan their family life.
If you were talking to someone and they're married, they haven't filed for divorce, but they came and talked to you about, I'm thinking about getting divorced. Do you have a top 1, 2, or 3 things you would tell that person to do in order to prepare to put themselves, I guess, in the best possible place if they decide to go forward with the divorce?
Absolutely. Um, I'd ask them to be really thoughtful, like we said earlier, about who their partner is, and anticipate some of the pitfalls. So a lot of times, like I just got a call the other day, and a woman of a 25-year marriage says, "I'm leaving this house." He has a girlfriend. I said, "You're not leaving your house, okay? You don't leave your property. You have to be intentional about what you're going to do with the marital family home. But leaving the property doesn't solve much. In fact, it can create a lot more problems down the road." So asking basic questions, right? Where are you going to live? Is your partner the type of person that's going to try and starve you out? Right? Is he going to give you anything if you want to move? Is there an exit package? Like, is there moving costs associated with that? Are they going to be friendly and cooperative during this period of time? Can we settle spousal support um, outside of court? So kind of taking an assessment of where the client might be vulnerable, because the worst thing to do is to just file the divorce haphazardly, not having considered the dynamics of the family, and one person's completely disenfranchised, right? They're not working, they're not getting spousal support, they don't have the money to live, and they don't really have the attorney fees to go forward. So um, assessing where the client vulnerabilities are is important. Just analyzing what kinds of things they're going to run into. So, are they stable with their job? Are they going to continue working through this process? Um, what are they going to do with the children now? How do they want to reorganize their lives? Most people do have kind of like a sense of how things should work post divorce, or through the divorce process, especially with children. You want to find out what your client envisions early on as the healthiest situation for the children. You also want to screen for the things that they normalized that you know are against the law. Domestic violence.
Mm.
The things that people say, and they don't even just kind of realize that it really matters in a case, that a spouse is behaving in ways that are scary for the family and scary for the children. So one big thing is just analyzing pitfalls. Is there domestic violence? How's this person going to stabilize themselves through divorce? Are they going to be able to afford attorney fees? Is early settlement advisable? Do we have someone cooperative on the other side? Things like that.
Do you think that when there is a case involving domestic violence, that and let's say the victim would be the wife. Let's just say in our example, the wife.
Mhm.
What do you tell a woman who's living maybe with a 1-year-old child or 2-year-old child in the family home that's experiencing being the victim of domestic violence? What should they do?
Well, first, they do need to get help. They need to get a lot of protective barriers between them and the abuser. So, getting a restraining order isn't always the first priority, especially it is a high priority, right? Because through a restraining order, you can certainly stop the escalation of the violence, but you have to also analyze as an advocate how violent that person is and whether or not they're going to seek immediate retribution against that woman and child, irrespective of a restraining order. And most people know it's just a piece of paper designed to deter. It
Mhm.
doesn't stop someone who's trying to kill you or hurt you. And I've had plenty of cases where the immediate advisement must be relocate, run and hide, you know, go to family members. Of course, you call the police if you're in a situation, but, they have got to conceal their whereabouts before you serve the abuser with the restraining order. And the reason for that is because people snap. People
Right.
make really bad decisions.
Recently a woman told me when I mentioned the restraining order calling the police, she said, "Mr. Davis, I can't do that." She says, "I can't call the police. I can't get a restraining order because it will ruin his life, his professional life.
Hmm.
And if that happens, who's going to support me and this child?"
Right.
What do you do in that situation?
I think that's a really smart observation by the victim. But we have plenty of tools to solve that. And the simplest, most straightforward one, most attorneys know that even if a permanent restraining order is well placed, a temporary one that expires usually does the trick without permanently implicating the person's professional licenses, ability to get state, contracts, past DOJ, fingerprinting, background checks, etc. So we're talking about teachers, firefighters, people who, maybe got into a bad fight with their spouse, but now they're facing, a situation where getting a restraining order could be a total wipeout on their future capability to earn a living, because that's what a restraining order does. It tags you. You go into the system. Um, Anytime you come around that person within 100 feet, they can call the police and have you arrested. So one tool that I see frequently used is just to do a temporary restraining order. And what you need to know is that a temporary restraining order can last 3 years. You can do it for the same period of time as a permanent restraining order. And that's a way to make sure that your ex-partner who's an abuser still maintains their economic viability, can provide for you spousal child support without losing their job.
Now, here's a question. When you get a restraining order, there's something called klutz, right?
Mhm.
Tell us what the klutz is.
Well, it's the way in which we document that there's been a restraining order that's applied for. So immediately when you file a restraining order, you'll see a klutz form, right? And once you fill out that form and give it to the clerk, it triggers like a profile essentially. That restraining order um, essentially goes into a database whereby police can see that there's a restraining order out on this person that needs to be enforced. Um,
Are temporary restraining orders put in klutz or just permanent, or both?
I think it's permanent. I think it's permanent. I think you turn in the klutz form, but I think it's the permanent one that goes into the klutz system.
Okay, very
Mhm.
good. Now, in this particular situation that I was mentioning, the woman is a stay-at-home mom, all right? And she's facing domestic violence, and she's concerned that she doesn't want to ruin um, the guy's life and his profession because of she wants support and she needs support. Now, you mentioned about moving out of the family home. Does that have any bearing on who ends up living in the family home, who ends up getting the family home, eventually in the divorce? What about this abandonment thing? Tell me something about that.
Yeah, so that's a really important consideration. First of all, if she's unsafe in the family home, why stay, right? If he's going to be the kind of person who, gets a restraining order, goes completely ballistic, has access to guns, staying in the family home is the least of your concerns. You're concerned about safety. Now,
Mm.
second to that, it's really hard to give up the family home, let's say if she leaves and get him out later, okay? So if your intention is to remain in the family home and have your child and spousal support cover the mortgage, then staying would probably be the better route. Now, if a person leaves the family home temporarily,
Uh-oh. I think we lost Tamara. We're going to try to get her back on. Stand by. We're having a technical difficulty. By the way, during the show, if you want to call in and have a question for us, you want to dial this number, bottom right hand corner, 563-999-3480. That's our call in number. You can ask me or Tamara questions. We'd be happy to answer them as part of this show. Hopefully, tomorrow we'll be able to log back in. There you are.
I'm so sorry about that. I don't know what happened.
You kind of disappeared from the stream.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah.
Um, so we were talking about, the financial impacts of, the violence and should you move, right? Should you move? And I guess safety would be the number one priority.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Now,
Mhm.
let's say the woman moves out of the house, father claims abandonment, takes the child. Is there anything that you can file as the woman's attorney to get her back in the house and get him out of the house?
Yes. Yes, you can. This is a big area that I think attorneys overlook. All right.
Mhm.
I have had situations where strategically, like, the guy will be a paralegal and knows how to do a haphazard form and gets the woman kicked out of the house, right? While that, you don't have to wait the 20 days, right, until there's a hearing to get her back in the house. I've had a lot of success filing ex parte applications to modify the temporary restraining order based upon evidence that, let's say, the woman is advancing that he came to my job, he talked to my employers, he tried to ruin me with friends and family. In this particular case, he was climbing through her windows. We had a lot of evidence that he was being more than just aggressive, but literally engaging in criminal activity, trying to move back into her apartment. She had already kicked him out. And so it was a really rogue situation where a couple was together, they separated. It was the woman's apartment, but he filed a restraining order to kick her out of the apartment. The court doesn't know who's on the lease. The court doesn't know who has the color of law to be there. The court didn't know that he was absolutely crazy. So we filed the temporary restraining order, showed the court all of the evidence, filed the ex parte application to modify the temporary restraining order and kicked him out. And not only that, he was arrested several times as he disobeyed the restraining order, and it just got really ugly. So you absolutely need, in a situation that is that volatile, you need the police to give you to consider asking the police for an emergency protective order, and that's designed to just get him or her to leave you alone in the few days that you need in order to file the temporary restraining order.
Okay. Okay, very good.
Mhm.
I got text a question, and I wanna ask you because I know you are an expert at this. It's a totally different subject.
Okay.
And then the fact scenario here is, well, the issue is the division of a family business, okay? So husband and wife are married, they're in the process of getting divorced, and husband claims the business is worth $5,000. Wife claims the business is worth a $500,000. What do and obviously
19
ha
seconds.
half of 25,000, excuse me, 5,000 is a lot less than half of 500,000. If you're a wife's attorney, what are some of the key things you should do in order to get half of the 500,000?
There's so much litigation around it. I'm steeped in litigation over these issues right now. I call it fuzzy math, right? It's just fuzzy math. Valuation is one of those issues that really was popularized by Trump, right? Because we're seeing a judge say straight out Trump overvalued his businesses. And based on those valuations, he was able to get better loan rates, but he essentially defrauded taxes in the state, essentially, by overvaluing. So that's an issue of valuation. And I think that the attorney does need to hire experts to some degree, to do a very thorough analysis about that business. It can be very detailed and technical. So I'm not going to get into some of those details, but I think you need to um, at least consider hiring a forensic accountant, to do a cash flow analysis of that business, et cetera. And you also need to really interview your client to see who was the managing spouse for that business. Were they both working the business? Is the business attributable to one person? One thing that people think, I think attorneys gloss over this issue, right? They think everything is a business. Everything is not a business under the law. Not all sole proprietorships are business. A lot of mom and pops or closely held corporations, you know, the income is attributable to, to one person, like a one person um, show, like a one man show or a very small operation, you need to really consult with an attorney to analyze some of those threshold issues. Do we really have a business here, or do we just have services being rendered? Um, because that can make the difference between how you value it, whether or not there's goodwill for that business, how you value the goodwill, etc.
Now, if I wanted to know, or get some recommendations from you,
Yeah,
uh, for forensic accountants or,
yeah.
those types of professionals, I could give you a call at your office?
Absolutely, absolutely. We carry lists. We know who the good ones are. Um, we've been working with people, our whole career, so we have short lists, and you can certainly give us a call anytime.
And your number is 310-271-7675?
Absolutely. Mhm.
Very good. Well, tomorrow we've come to the end of this segment of this show, all about family law. And right now we're scheduled to do these every Sunday at 9 a.m. And in the future, if you want to call in, you can call in at that 563 number you see on the screen if you have questions. So this is a great first show tomorrow.
Yeah,
Anything you
yeah,
want to add as we sign off?
yeah. No, Vince, I know you've been doing this for a long time. You have a bunch of other shows. You have a wonderful show on child dependency. Tell the viewers about that show.
It's called Fight CPS and Win. And
That one's brilliant. Yeah,
it's on YouTube and on Facebook
yeah.
and on, I think there's clips on TikTok and YouTube
Yeah.
Shorts and such. So, just Google it or just search it on YouTube, Fight CPS and Win.
All right, good. So eventually we're going to do fight for custody and win within this show, but we're going to have to warm up our audience for that.
Okay,
But I
very
just
good.
want to say it's a pleasure being here this morning. Thank you for putting this platform together for us. And I'm looking forward to connecting with the audience a little further later.
All right, sounds good. And I'll see you next week at
All right.
9 a.m. on Sunday.
All right, Vince. Have a
Bye
great
bye.
week.
Uh huh.
Okay, bye-bye.